I spoke about this with Emira Woods. She's Associate Fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies.
You see so much engagement from China in particularly the extractive industries, oil, gas, mining, but also you see restaurants throughout the continent that are booming, in fancy areas and all of these kind of new ways through which the Chinese community is engaging on the continent.
That was the other thing that I found interesting. Small-scale traders, entrepreneurs, obviously the stuff you're talking about, there's so much investment, but it seems as though they're kind of on almost every level of the economy. So talk to me about that.
Well, I think what you have is Chinese engagement, particularly in infrastructure development on the continent, and it has been sort of a landmark of how China has interfaced with Africa, really for the past few decades. So when you see these major infrastructure developments, whether it's roads or bridges or railways, it is often Chinese workers that are coming in, and oftentimes many of those people decide that, this is where they may want to stay for some time. And so you have people maybe coming in for one sector and then staying to either do what you see now, many textile, clothing businesses around the continent. You see people who are across the board building small businesses.
There's always, there can be growing pains, there can be difficulties with integration. I mean, what are we seeing?
Well, it's hardly seamless, I think, and it depends on the country, right? I mean, so you have 55 on the continent, so it's hard to generalize. But in many areas, you have, a resentment that's grown, particularly around mining and the extractive industries. But I would say, there is also in certain areas goodwill. Liberia, where I'm from, had, because of the Ebola crisis, and the countries impacted by Ebola, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, saw this massive flow of Chinese doctors and medical professionals in the midst of that crisis. And, it was China and Cuba sending in doctors to help save lives at the time when others were sending in military staff and, equipment and the rest.
But I was talking to somebody not too long ago from Nairobi who talked about how, you talked about the colonial powers, how the West used to come in and do this and that, but that what they're seeing in Nairobi, at least what she's seeing in Kenya, is something tangible. When you put in a rail system and suddenly you can get goods somewhere quickly, where it doesn't rot, where you go over the roads, and now people can make money, it makes a difference in their lives. So, I mean, you are seeing some of that, aren't you?
Oh, without a doubt. What you see is concrete development, the road which remains, or the port which is built. And so, whereas you had, let's say, from the U.S., in development assistance, which often 80 to 90%, gets spent on U.S. firms and U.S. consultants and gets spent in the U.S., quite frankly, right? You have, at the end of the day, when it comes to China, you have a road that's built that people can then use, and you have a bridge that people can see and benefit from.